今日も元気いっぱいだよって人。今日は普通かなって人。しんどい、辛い、何もしたくないって人。
Guess that's my cue. Hello everyone. Now, picture this if you will. You're a young, auspicious gymnast with all the talent in the world. You successfully enroll in and graduate from an elite sports science university as one of the top students, winning the national championship for solo gymnastics in the process. Cut to, you're now 31, living alone, your sports career is over, and you work as a host at a TV network's children's show. Cause what the hell else are you gonna do with your time besides drown the lack of purpose and direction in your life with canned beer from the combini and suffocated with tobacco? Sounds relatable? Sure it does, we're millennials. And the aptly named Life Lessons with Uramichi Onii-san from 2021's anime summer season sure has us covered with the bitter, self-deprecating dark humor we crave to cope with the futility of our existence. And it even mostly succeeds in delivering. Based on the web manga by Kusegaku, the show is a slice-of-life comedy which, for non-weeps, what the hell are you doing here? Means there is basically no real plot or story to progress. What it instead relies on is basically a sketch-like format that loosely strings together scenes from the everyday routines of its protagonist, Omota Uramichi, and his colleagues in their personal lives and on the set of Together with Maman.
Maman to together.
Sure, why not? The most obvious motive here is the dichotomy between their cheerful and happy personas on the show and their disillusioned adult frustrations in real life that are put into stark contrast with their audience's infantile carelessness. For a show like that to work at all, good writing is essential, and fortunately Life Lessons mostly succeeds in that regard, with a pretty colorful cast of characters that interact on an engaging and relatable level. We've got our protagonist, Uramichi, whom I've already summed up in the opening of this video. He's basically a poster child for depression, dreading the sound of the alarm in the morning and having his will to live slowly chipped away one day at a time and clearly already out of fucks to give. He spends most of his free time exercising, drinking and smoking on his own and makes it clear to us viewers that he really doesn't like his life very much in general. And while it's easy to assume that some incident ended his promising athletic career, leading him down this dark path, a closer look implies that even the whole sports thing may not really have come out of his own ambition, but rather his family's, as all they ever gift him is training equipment. Thanks, Mom! Just what I wanted. So it's just as valid to assume that at some point after graduating he just realized that gymnastics isn't really what makes him happy and succinctly found himself confronted with the old conundrum. What the fuck now? And apparently the first thing that actually happened is him becoming an exercise instructor in a children's TV show. Doesn't make him happy either, but for lack of a desire to do anything else at age 31 will have to do. And according to his own admission, the children's innocence and playing with them is the only thing that makes him feel at least any purpose at all in his otherwise crushingly empty life. Which is kind of funny considering the savageness of some of the kids' remarks at his crack-ups.
あれれれれ、まだちょっと元気が足りないみたいだね。もう一度読んでみよう。せーの。うさっ。
兄さん大丈夫？酒焼け？
But also somewhat understandable seeing the more sweet and genuinely affectionate things they can surprise him with.
ゆかちゃんはさっきから何をしているのかな？奇襲？
浦道お兄さんの元気が出るおまじない。
ゆかちゃん。
His colleagues include Iketeru Daga, a 27-year-old pretty boy who works as a singing instructor on Together with Maman and is often paired up with Uramichi in varying skits they perform as various characters, including but not limited to Germinator vs Bacterian, Longhorn Beetle and Bagworm, and League Ninja and God of Shiso, which in turn are part of the Condiment Shinobi. I swear I'm not making this up. Iketeru used to be a musician and musical actor before joining the show and has a pretty simple mind with his thoughts constantly trailing off. He's also rather childish, which is best demonstrated by his humor that makes it impossible for him to not die of laughter at even the most trite of dirty jokes. Which at first sounds like it might get old fast, but kudos to his voice actor Mamoru Miyano, who makes it a highlight each and every time with the most believable wheezing laugh I think I've ever seen in anime.
俺さっき初めてチンダル現象って言葉知って酸欠になるほど笑ったんですチンダル現象ってめちゃくちゃ面白いですかチンダル現象
あ、いた。2人ともスタンバイお願いします。
Despite the fact Uramichi likes to abuse that knowledge at numerous occasions to make Iketeru laugh at quite inconvenient times, he's a lot more patient in his interactions with him due to his lovable naivety. Coherently, Iketeru is the person with the fewest obvious adult problems on the show. He lives with his older sister Mabui, who is pretty much him, just with tits and ovaries instead of cock and bollocks. And their dog Sayuri. Iketeru's co-singing instructor is 32-year-old Utano Tadano, who graduated from a prestigious music college but apparently had a rather unstable career due to bad luck and timing. Before becoming Iketeru's singing partner on Together with Maman, she worked as an idol, a cover singer and a jazz nightclub singer. She's been living with her deadbeat comedian boyfriend for 6 years and is pretty discontent with her life, which she pins on her obsession with marriage despite knowing full well that wouldn't really solve her dissatisfaction, as a nice day in a white dress and a new ring by themselves don't really change anything in the long run. The last two main cast members are 28-year-old Mitsuo Kumatani and Tobikichi Usahara, who both work as mascots in animal costumes that are based on animal puns involving their own names. Kumatani plays a bear named Kumao, as that's what the beginning of his name Kuma means in Japanese, and Usahara plays a rabbit named Usao, as his name starts with Usa, which is the Japanese word for rabbit. They're both Uramichi's juniors from college days and are the unlikely duo of the group. Usahara is a loudmouth who's obsessed with becoming funnier in order to get a girlfriend, which he never really succeeds at. He likes to play pranks on Uramichi and talks behind his back, which is kind of a weird trait since he also deeply respects him and is also constantly terrified of him, as Uramichi has little patience for Usahara's antics, often resulting in swift reprimands. Kumatani is the polar opposite of Usahara. He's quiet, composed and mostly indifferent, supposedly deriving some degree of pleasure at least from often getting Usahara into trouble with Uramichi by revealing the former's thoughts and actions to the latter. He used to be a delinquent at some point, which makes him the only one to eventually do something about their idiotic director having them shoot a beach music video in winter and a Christmas one in summer, which obviously involves working conditions I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. He does have a kind side though, as seen when taking care of stray cats, the most original of all anime tropes. Kumatani is also the person that seems the most misplaced in his job. Not because he's bad at it, quite the opposite actually. In his costume he nails the cheerful animal mascot role just as well as Usahara does. But while Usahara is rather outgoing in real life, Kumatani himself couldn't be further from his role personality-wise. There was a couple of times I had to remind myself who was under Kumao's mask, which never happened with Usao. There's another few recurring side characters, including the aforementioned idiot director, an overly dramatic writer, this walking talking gay stereotype of a choreographer, and another Kumatani Usahara-like duo from the marketing and digital departments respectively. So we've got a pretty expansive and colorful cast with plenty of opportunities for funny interactions. And this is where I'd like to get back to the point about voice acting I made when I talked about Iketeru's laugh and how brilliantly Mamoru Miyano delivers it. For reference, the man is a living legend in Japan's pop culture industry. Aside from his success in Japanese pop music, probably best known for his roles in classic shows like Death Note, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, Steins Gate, Hunter x Hunter, Soul Eater, Wolf's Rain, and way too many more to all name here or display on screen. Speaking of famous voice actors, there's generally no shortage of them in this show. Our main character Uramichi is voiced by another legend, Hiroshi Kamiya, whose accolades include Levi from Attack on Titan, as well as some of my personal favorite characters ever, not in small part due to his work, like Fujino Kiyoshi, Saiki Kusuo, Zetsubo Sensei, and Koyomi Ara Aragi.
僕の名前は荒木だ。
失礼噛みました
違う、わざとだ。
噛みました
わざとじゃない。
Kamiya, as always, nails the bizarre opposites of Uramichi's fake cheerfulness and his true gloomy self. Utano is voiced by Nana Mizuki, who, much like Mamoru Miyano, is a mainstay in Japanese pop culture in general. Her most noteworthy voice roles include characters in Naruto, Strawberry 100%, Symphogear, Hardcatch Precure, and way too many more. Usahara is voiced by Sugita Tomozaki, who has voiced characters in Gintama, Sket Dance, Suzumiya Haruhi, and Botakoi. Kumatani's seiyu Yuichi Nakamura is best known for his work in Jujutsu Kaisen, Haikyuu, Fairy Tail, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 5, and Mobile Suit Gundam. This is a premium cast if ever I've seen one, and it shows. The character and dialogue writing in itself is overall rock solid, but the delivery is what really makes it all come together. The source for most of the comedy is the fact that none of the show's cast are particularly well versed in hiding their true adult feelings while on stage. So their performances more often than not turn into what feels like an adulthood preparation boot camp in that weird offshoot of Sesame Street called Prozac Alley. And while that in itself is a perfectly fine foundation, it's also part of what makes life lessons a bit tricky to get into at first. It takes a while to get used to the fact that none of their surroundings react to the cast's antics in the way you'd expect them to. In the real world, none of these bellends would be able to keep their jobs for longer than a roughly estimated 7 minutes. But here everyone just lets them get on with it. And once you've internalized that, it sort of clashes with the less humorous moments of the filming set when the show actually stops playing depression for laughs and takes a minute to paint a fairly realistic picture of the condition, characterized not by huge exuberant outbursts of dramatically over-stylized sorrow, but by the chronic somber grayness of a life led generally devoid of purpose and joy. I'd like to clarify that when I say the show plays depression for laughs, I don't mean in any sort of ill-spirited way, as the condition is never mocked or looked down upon. Dark, black, morbid humor is one of the hardest disciplines to actually pull off, especially with touchy subjects such as mental illness. And while Life Lessons struggles a bit with the overall coherency of its tone, it still manages to succeed in delivering its message and entertain at the same time. So at the end of the day, is Life Lessons with Uramichi Onii-san worthwhile? Generally, I'd say yes, absolutely. The animation may only be average, it may take a few episodes to accustom to the contrast between the accurate depiction of the darker underlying themes on one hand and the silly character-based humor on the other, and not every single joke will make you lose your shit. But it's got expressive artwork and strong comedic timing, so if you're not put off by the subject matter at hand, yeah, it's definitely quite unique and worth watching. So that concludes my summarized thoughts on Life Lessons with Uramichi Onii-san. Quite cordial thanks for the attention. Goodbye for now.